Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Tabletop Gaming Guild is all about the experiences and memories that playing board games with friends and families can create. On this episode, we have Shawn from Geek Collaborative Gaming. We're going to go ahead and talk about his company and all the board games he's designed. Well, at least most of them. All right. So, Shawn, do you want to go ahead and give just a little spiel about your company?
Yeah, sure. Geeks Collaborative Gaming is, we're a really small group. It's really just me and my wife, and we have a lot of outside geeks that we collaborate with, and that's why it's called Geeks Collaborative Gaming. We work pretty closely with caveloot.com. We do a lot of work with Indy Martin of Tortoise and Hare Creations, Toby Lancaster of Dark Realm Maps. So it's just kind of, the company itself is just me and my wife, but we do a lot of work with as many people as we can.
What got you wanting to start the company?
Originally, boredom. When I used to work for an engineering firm, and I've always been a pretty major workaholic, but that engineering firm would give us the week off between Christmas and New Year's, and one year I was just really bored, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna a board game. So I did. And that's kind of just where it started. I tried the first one. It was a battle game that never really made it anywhere, but I really, really enjoyed it, and then I started, with kids games for my kids, and it just kind of ballooned from there.
How does that design process go for you? Like when you're thinking about a game, do you just jump right into a prototype, or you just write it down?
I usually do about a page worth of notes, kind of scribbling it all down, and then I jump into the prototype and find as much free artwork as I can, and get one made by the Print and Play Games out of Vancouver, which is just over the river from us, and then start playing. There's a group at the friendly local game store that they meet up once a month or twice a month and play board games. So play specifically beta games. So
cool.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
So you're the first game you actually published, was that The Color of Magic?
The Language of Magic, yes.
Oh, The Language of Magic. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah. So that was funded in I think 2018. Barely made funding, but I threw it together. I think I planned it for less than 3 days before I launched it. So it just kind of threw it together, hit launch, and we funded pretty close to the end of the campaign, but we still made it.
That's awesome.
So
I heard Kickstarter's a lot of work. Is that a lot of work for you?
Kickstarter is a lot of work. It's really hard to figure out how to set it up right so people are gonna find your product attractive, and then keeping up with the updates and all the promotions and everything. It's a lot of work. It's almost could be a full-time job probably.
Yeah.
So.
And I know you just recently got your latest one funded.
Yeah.
Was it the Skinner's Sanctum?
Yeah, the Skinner's Sanctum. It's a combination of the Dungeoneer's Guide rulebook, and the first adventure that goes along with that is called the Skinner's Sanctum. So it's 2 for 1. We wanted to finish the game, but we also really wanted to help the artist out that we had slated for the project, because he had a financial crisis, and it was going to be able to get him about $2,000 for the artwork, so we tried to push it through, and it worked. So
yeah, that is awesome.
He seems to be pretty appreciative of it, and he's actually going above and beyond what we paid for. So it's definitely a win-win.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So you think you're going to keep him on for other RPGs and stuff in the future?
Yeah, he is helping. He's already helping with the Adventure Post campaign that we have running on Patreon. So he's done a wolf so far, and he'll be doing all of our, I don't want to spoil it, but I'll call them murder dolls for now. But yeah, so he's on board for that one as well.
Do you want to just give a brief description of what Adventure Post is?
Yeah, so Adventure Post was the second game that we got funded on Kickstarter, and it's kind of a quirky little solo role-playing game of sorts played on a postcard. And so during the Kickstarter campaigns, you get a postcard in the mail once every week, and that postcard has a QR code that takes you to a website that has a little guided adventure text that's associated to a map on the backside of the postcard. And so you put your little miniature on the postcard, and you kind of you read the text and play through. And yeah, it's 12 weeks long. The first week you get the character sheet postcard as well as the first map postcard, and then by the end of it, all the decisions that you make leading up to the end of it kind of alter the scoring or the outcome of the game.
That's really cool.
It uses a really simple system kind of inspired by Fighting Fantasy, so I think that was some of the draw of the game, was just how simple it was. You only have 3 stats to worry about: your skill, your resourcefulness, and your stamina. When your stamina depletes, the game's over, essentially. But
sounds like have you ever played Legends of Dragonholt?
I have not, no.
So that one's it's like a step up from a choose your own adventure, so you have your own stats and stuff in it, and you read through a story. So that sounds like your thing sounds like a cooler version of that, where you do it over time and stuff, and probably have a little bit more content than that did. It's still
I
really
don't know.
cool.
I'll have to check it out. The Legend.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it.
I'm sorry, is this legitimate postcards, like play by mail, old school
absolutely.
style?
Yeah, they
wow.
are.
Okay, cool.
And you get little, the 4 1/4 by 6 inch postcards. You get one of them in your mail each week. It was a weird little, just kind of spur of the moment idea that me and the owner of CableLoot.com had. And again, it was another one of those where it's like, this sounds like it could work. So we threw it on Kickstarter, and 3 days later we launched, and it got 373% funded. So it did quite a bit better than Language of Magic did.
That is awesome. Now, do you think that you continually do a little bit better each time just because of the reputation you're gaining as a group or a company?
I think so. I mean, we're learning a lot about just how to make it flow a little bit better, how to make it go a little bit faster, and also kind of reaching out to more and more people to get more writing or better writing involved. My wife has done a lot of the writing. She doesn't really enjoy it all that much because she's more of a Harry Potter. That's where her fandom lies, and so the Dungeons and Dragons is a little more for her, and since it's kind of along those same lines of that. But she does a really good job. People have complimented her on her writing and whatnot, but now we're starting to reach out while she's focusing on a Tudor era adventure post game. We've got the Wandering Wizard involved in some of them and whatnot, so it's I think the repetition and just reaching out to more people is making it a better product in the long run.
I say if you ever get the license for it and have your wife write a Harry Potter RPG, oh man,
I actually asked. I sent an email to the company and asked Wizarding World if I could write one, and they said no, but I tried.
Yeah, I think their license is all wrapped up in definitely the Auk owns most of it, and I think it's Wizard of the Coast owns the other half. I can't remember. That would have been cool though.
It would have been, yeah. I thought it wouldn't hurt to ask, but,
So, one thing cool that I saw that in a lot of the... Well, first off, what got you... so you started off making the board games. What got you into wanting to do the RPGs, or was it sort of like in tandem?
It was sort of in tandem. I played a lot of Ultima Online when I was younger, all the way through high school. I loved Ultima Online, and I wanted to take on a project where I recreated Ultima Online in a tabletop setting, and so that kind of started it. And the Dungeoneer's Guide is actually the derivative of that. It started out way too complicated, way too much math, and so I've kind of simplified it and brought it down, and that's kind of where the Dungeoneer's Guide it started from my version of the Ultima tabletop.
So just what I was saying, is the Dungeoneer Guide, is that the core to all your RPG systems?
That's the core. Yeah, that's the core to at least the Skinner Sanctum so far, but there's going to be a lot. There's going to be more. Adventure Post uses more of a fighting fantasy core. It's quite a bit more simple. The Everweird system was designed by Liam Thompson, so it's a kind of a step up from Adventure Post, but a little more simplified than the Dungeoneer's Guide. And I kind of regret having 3 different systems now because it's kind of hard to keep them all going. But I wanted to keep the Everweird for the board game more of a dungeon crawl board game aspect rather than a role playing game. So
I was looking at that Everweird, and that thing looks amazing.
Thank you. It's unfortunate it didn't fund, but it's all right.
There's always, I'm hoping he's still going to go, or maybe try again or something. But it looks amazing.
Yeah, thank you. We already have the artist. I'm paying for all the artwork up front, so the artwork's going to be done here soon, and we'll try to relaunch when we have the whole thing all together. So
now, do you find that Kickstarter is more like akin to you have the game completed pretty much, and then you kickstart? Is it better at that point, or is it easier at that point, or is it a lot harder if you try to do what Kickstarter used to be, where you had an idea and it got funded? Do you think so? Basically, what I'm saying is, do you think companies like CMON and some of the other ones that have completely completed games and they're just using Kickstarter to get sales, is that hurting you at all, you think?
I think it is. I think there's kind of a lot of backers kind of have this idea where if it's not complete, I'm not going to back it. I've actually had people tell me, well, it's not finished yet, so why would I support it? It's like, well, the idea is to actually get it finished. You know, that's you kickstart the project so you can get it done. But so I think there's a little bit of that. Like I said, I've had direct messages of the sort. So
I think that's crazy because that's the whole point of Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is to be able to kickstart an idea.
Right.
So having these companies allowing them just to sell their product on there sort of just...
Yeah, which makes it really hard for small groups like me. I'm fortunate enough to have a day job that pays pretty well, and I do a lot of side work to help pay for the artwork, so I can usually get the artwork done before the game starts, or before I start the Kickstarter. But people that don't have that, they really struggle because artwork's expensive. If you're going to pay for good artwork, it costs a lot.
So the other question I had was, you have your RPG has a DM-less system on there.
Yeah.
Which sounds really cool. Could you just give us like the overview of how that works?
Yeah. So for Adventure Post and the Dungeoneer's Guide, both they're fairly similar in this, but the adventure text that we send out with the system acts as the dungeon master of sorts, and so it tells you the story, it gives you instructions, it gives you options, you pick an option, you go with it, and then where things are randomized, there's roll tables to help keep it kind of different every single time. More so in the Dungeoneer's Guide, that's got a lot more roll tables than Adventure Post does. But so you come up to a trap or an instance, and so you roll the dice, 1d6, 2d6, refer to a table that tells you kind of what happens, and then you try to avoid it or whatever, and so your dice just kind of determine the outcome of the whole game.
Does some of the times the story change based on those?
The story does change based on some of those in Adventure Post more. Still working on rewriting part of the Skinner Sanctum with the help of the Wandering Wizard, and so I'm hoping to include more of that in the Skinner Sanctum.
Curious about that as James as well, as to how that works with like divergent storylines.
Yeah, it does have to be fairly linear, just because it's kind of limited. But
I was going to throw in one more thing here real quick. I just wanted to get the name correct. The Dice Mimic series.
Yeah.
That looks amazing.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited about those.
That looks... I'm super excited about that. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So about a year ago, I asked Indy Martin, Tortoise and Hare Creations, to make me kind of a social media icon, which was a Beholder D20 combination. And then and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I never actually used it for a social media icon, and then we started the Dungeoneer's Guide, and it's a D6 system. So we asked her, well, can you make a gelatinous cube that's a D6, and then we'll use that as a kind of cover image. And then shortly after that, it was like, well, why don't you do all of them? And so now we have all 7 of the polyhedrals, the 6 different shapes plus the percentile die, and they're all different mimics of famous D&D character or creatures, and then we finished all the artwork, and then we weren't really sure what to do with the artwork. So then I started reaching out, and some people said, you better make some miniatures out of that. So that's where the miniatures are coming in. So
yeah, the miniatures look awesome.
Yeah, the sculptor did a really good job on those.
And that one is going to go, those stats and those, so if they back that Kickstarter, that'll work with your Dungeoneer system?
It's gonna have stats for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. It's gonna have stats for Pathfinder 2nd edition, and it's gonna have stats for the Dungeoneer's Guide. There's already stats for Everweird, but that'll happen when Everweird happons. So
that's awesome. So if they have any of those 4 products, it'll work out for them.
Yeah. And we're also going to have the Wandering Wizard again write a D&D 5th edition module to go along with the dice mimics, and he's got a whole story written up, and it's got a kind of a fun element to it where people find the essentially fate stones, and the fate stones are the dice, because in the real world we're rolling the dice to determine the fate of our player characters. So it's kind of a fun element. That's
cool. I wish Peter was here. He'd really love that.
That's cool. Thank you.
No problem. Do you have a date for that to go on Kickstarter yet, or are you still working on that?
Still working on that. I get 4 sets of the high quality prints from the manufacturer tomorrow, and then I'm going to send them out to some painters, and they're going to paint them up so I can use them as marketing material and whatnot. And then I'm still working on finishing the stats and kind of releasing those every once in a while to try to build an audience. But I try not to blast promotions too much, so it's kind of a slow go. But I'm helping somebody with their Kickstarter for the Legend of Dragons, and I was going to run it after the Legend of Dragons is done. But
yeah, I saw that. That actually looks pretty interesting too.
It does. It is kind of a cool thing. It's pretty similar to Magic the Gathering, but you have an avatar dragon and a bunch of other dragons and you're battling. But then if you want to play solo, there's kind of a map adventure where you can take over the map with your dragons.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was thinking about Dan because Dan really likes Magic the Gathering. He's our resident MTG player.
Nice. I bought a couple of decks and moved away from Spokane, which is where the guy I was playing Magic the Gathering with lived. So I haven't gotten back to it since I've been back to Portland. But
it's fine. A lot of people fall into and out of that game for a variety.
It is fun. My 8-year-old loves it. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Dan, that the MTG online game night thing you run, that's free, right?
I'm sorry. Right now, we're running a Friday Night Magic at Home promotion through the store's Discord channel, where just people play Magic Gathering online with the Arena program, and if they submit a screenshot to the channel, then I've got codes for them, and the codes redeem for like sleeves and other like accessories.
That's cool.
Nice. I haven't played Magic the Gathering.
It's pretty good. It's like a cross between Duels of the Planeswalkers, which was their previous digital implementation, and like a mobile game.
Nice. Yeah, it's another thing I'll have to check out.
Yeah. So I'll get on to a couple other ones that I had questions about. But what is your favorite board game?
My favorite board game. So the game that really got me into loving board games in the first place was D&D Castle Ravenloft, the dungeon crawler. That's kind of what kicked it all off. But since then, I've played quite a bit of Catan. That's one of the few ones I can get my wife to play with me. And I really got into Trogdor. I think most recently that's kind of been my favorite game is the Trogdor board game. It's a lot of fun.
I believe the Trogdor game was a Kickstarter game, right?
It was, yes.
And Trogdor is a cartoon that was based in England.
Yeah, Trogdor the Burninator.
Yes.
Yes.
Very, very popular. So for those that don't know, you might want to look it up, but it's pretty cool. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to... I guess the life of somebody who designs board games is kind of consumed by designing them rather than playing them. Yeah. That's what they say, right? You teach a man how to play a board game, he'll have fun for an hour. Teach him how to design board games, and he'll never have fun again. But yeah, I think more often than not, I'm playing either Catan with a group of online Catan universe players, or Trogdor, or I play a lot of kids role playing games with my kids. They love it. So
yeah, what type of well, I know you have Tyke's Dungeon: The Crypt.
Yeah, so Tyke's Dungeon is I designed it for my 8-year-old when he was 5, and so it started out really simple, and then as he's aged, the game has kind of progressed along with him, and so now it's kind of a really simple kids role-playing game that uses some custom dice, and you have your Tyke, and they've got pretty much 3 feats, 3 abilities that they can do, and their own stats, and so there's a dungeon crawl board game that it started with, and I haven't really finished it yet. I'm still not sure if I want to go with another role-playing system or keep it as a simple dungeon crawl. So that one's still in the works, but I'll figure out what to do with it one of these days.
The art for it looks really cool.
Yeah, that's the game I've spent the most money on the artwork, and it's the ones I haven't finished yet. So it's the biggest money sink so far.
Yeah, it looks really good. So yeah, when you get done, I bet it's going to kick off pretty well.
I hope so. I just got to figure out what I'm going to do.
So Castles of Ravenloft, I believe that one was the one where it was a dungeon crawl, but when you went through, it was DM-less, and you'd flip the tiles as you went, right?
Yep, you'd flip the tiles, and then you'd flip a card to kind of see what sort of event happened.
I think it was a pretty neat system.
Yeah, it was. It was really easy to get overwhelmed with critters, and it took a long time to play, but when you don't have anybody to play D&D with, it's a really good substitute.
Yeah, I think you can solo it too.
Yeah, you can. Yep.
I don't know if that's any fun, but
it's still
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
It's still fun as long as you kind of tweak the rules a little bit so you don't flip an event card every single time.
Yeah. I had one where we were just murdered from that.
Yeah. Was it Zombicide? Gets out of hand pretty fast.
Yeah, I had a copy of Zombicide, and I played a little bit, and yeah, the game was way too swingy for me.
Yeah.
I got more into Descent 2nd Edition, and Mansions of Madness.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah. So if you ever want to play any games, by the way, let us know because we go on Tabletop Simulator and play them up.
Oh, nice. That would be fun.
But another one that I wanted to talk about real quick, or did you have any questions before I keep just asking you about games?
No, that's fine. Yeah, keep going.
All right. The one that really interested me, and I didn't even know about it because I was just flipping through the site and checking stuff out, was your Castle Tiles and Armies game.
Yeah.
And that guy is a free print and play.
Right. So Cast Tiles and Armies, I guess I didn't know that Cast Tiles was an actual place. I learned that after I put it out there. But it's just it's a free print and play that's a 2-player game. It's really basic kind of tile placement. A couple people said it was fairly similar to King Domino, but I've never King Domino, but I've never actually played it, so I don't know how close it is. But you start draw a bunch of tiles, and then you place them out on the table kind of to build your fortress, and then you start placing your army tiles, and then you go head to head trying to destroy the other person's castle.
Yeah, I think the only thing that it's similar to with King Domino is just the initial where you're making your kingdom.
Oh, okay.
Because then in King Domino, you actually have tiles laid out, and based in turn order, you're going to select tiles to put in your kingdom, and you're just trying to like match tile types, and they'll have little I don't know if they're stars or castles, or I can't remember. I have it right over there. And then you get these are multipliers for however many of that type you have connected.
Oh, okay.
That's King Domino. It's like a 5x5 grid max.
It's fairly similar because when you're building your walls, there's walls of different strengths, and if you put them side by side, you get the sum of those, and that's the strength of that junction of wall, so to speak. And so you can also reinforce walls from back behind, which then adds even more to the strength of the wall.
Yeah, it definitely intrigues me. I printed it out, but I haven't actually set it up yet. So.
Oh, cool.
So I definitely
let me know what you think.
Out. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun.
Sweet. So. Yeah, that's only the first version of it. So if you have any feedback, I'd be more than happy to hear it and make some tweaks.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. That, and I printed out your Joust for Glory too. I think both are 2 players.
Both are 2-player, yeah.
So.
Yep. And Joust for Glory is actually getting a full artwork kit. So Florian, I tagged him in the Instagram post and on Facebook, but he's doing the full thing. All the cards. There's 8 different knights, 4 kind of on the light side, 4 on the dark side, and so that one's gonna be a fully published game. We might go through Game Crafter rather than Kickstarter to try it because I've never done it that way before. So, and that one was actually designed to integrate into a D&D campaign. Each one of the characters have all the stats are based on something that you would see in Dungeons and Dragons. So you have like the number of the stat, which is 19, which gives you a +4 modifier. And so the Joust for Glory was designed to integrate directly into your D&D campaign. The stats are pretty similar to what you'd see on a normal player character. And essentially you could bring the jousting arena into your D&D campaign, use the knights that are part of the game as NPCs, and then your PCs would essentially be ported over to the Joust for Glory using the stats that they already have in order to interact inside of the jousting arena.
That's pretty cool.
It started as an idea where we were just going to do pretty much what it is right now, which is the black and white, and we were going to send it out as just a print and play game as just kind of a mail-in post for a couple of people who wanted it, and then just decided, we'll do the artwork, make it something.
And I know Game Crafter, I got a couple of their games that they printed out recently, and they're getting a lot better. Their quality's getting a lot better. The original one, I think I showed you saw before, which is a game, the Transylvania game that my friend made.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think at this point, 6 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And the quality of that game's not that great, but they've definitely got a lot better.
Yeah. The first one I got from the Game Crafter was Jason Glover's Desolate. And it was pretty good quality too, and I'm backing his new one as well. That's going to crowdfund through there, which I didn't know they had a crowdfunding platform until I was looking at his newest campaign, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm excited to see how they turn out.
I think they also sponsor a con. I think it's where they allow people to submit game designs.
Oh.
And they give out rewards for that too. I think it's in Ohio. I'll have to
cool.
look that up. If they still do, I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, cool. I submitted Tyke's Dungeon to the Geek Way to the West competition a couple of years ago, and it actually got selected as one of the finalists. But then I had to cancel the trip, so I couldn't actually attend. So
that's awesome, though. Still,
yeah, it was
Geek Way to
exciting.
the West is huge, so that's cool. You
Yeah,
ever think about resubmitting it?
Yeah, I almost did again last year, but again, it's in such a kind of a weird state right now. I don't know if I'm gonna go, dungeon crawl or RPG or what. I think I should just keep it as a kid's dungeon crawl, but I'm on the fence.
It might be cool to do both.
Yeah, I thought about that too, because it would be pretty simple just to tweak some of the rules and make it a role playing game. But yeah,
you get a dungeon crawl and an RPG.
Right, kind of like Everweird is. It's meant to be a tile-based dungeon crawl, but it's really easy just to modify a couple of things and play as a party, an endless dungeon or, get with a game master or whatever.
How long have you been working on Everweird? Because that one looks like it's been there for a bit.
I bought it from the original designer as kind of a favor to help him out of a financial bind he was having with medical debt, and that was in July, so almost a year ago is when I acquired the rights to Everweird. And so I've been working on it since then.
Yeah, I just thought of one. As a designer, I'm sure you have a pile of things not quite cooked. How big is your pile of things not quite cooked?
Way larger than I'm comfortable with. Because it all started, the very first game I funded was The Language of Magic. And then, since then, there's Tyke's Dungeon, there's the original game that I started, Siege Hold. I've got the Dungeoneer's Guide going, I've got Everweird going, I've got these couple of little print and play games, and now there's about 5 other little tiny games that are meant to just be really cheap little, $5 to $10 games that you can sell, and it's a kind of in collaboration with caveloot.com again. So there's just a lot of them, but it's a lot of fun to work on them and nerd out. And yeah.
Have you taken something that you're working on and then tossed it into the dumpster fire, or do you save that project and just kind of lock it away for a while before looking at it again?
Yeah, there's a whole folder where it's just called _old, and I've got probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 games in there, and it's this one's never going to go anywhere, so I just dump it in that folder, and it's on an external hard drive on my computer, and it just stays there, and I never look at it again, really. So that's happened many times.
Okay, so cold storage, but not the dumpster fire.
Yeah, cold storage.
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't think I've ever hit delete on anything just in case. I always just put it to the side, because you never know. You might have a spark of inspiration and come back.
Yeah, or be able to salvage something from it.
Yeah, a different game.
Yep.
So while we're in there, I have a question for you. One of the things I was looking at, but I don't know much about, is you have a thing called caveloot.com.
Yeah. So that's not mine. That's caveloot.com is owned by Style Teckle. His real name is Eric. But so he kind of specializes in selling LARPing gear mostly. But he does a lot of dice. He moves a lot of dice. He's also got this Dice Looters, which is a Patreon where you can sign up and you get dice in the mail every single month, which is where a lot of my dice collection has come from. So, we just work hand in hand. He did all of the fulfillment for Adventure Post, so he's the one that actually put all the postcards in the mail and shipped them out. I'm glad he did it rather than me, because that would not have been fun. But and so he's just kind of he does a lot of shipping for any of our projects, pretty much.
That's really cool.
Some of the ideas, I think Adventure Post was his original idea. He was like, we could do small games on postcards. That was kind of his first thought. And it's well, let's turn it into a solo role-playing game on postcards. And so that's kind of where, we feed off of each other quite a bit. We've got a list of game ideas that'll keep us going until about 2035 at this point.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like you do value community feedback a lot, and you actually pulled in some people from the community that have fed back. How positive so far has your community been?
It's been really positive, I think. The nice thing about the board game industry is there's not a lot of trolls. You find one every once in a while, but most people, when they're providing feedback, they try to make it constructive. And so, yeah, I think I put out as many teasers as I can to try to get feedback from people. Sometimes it's hard to hear their feedback. If they say something's wrong with it, you don't want there to be anything wrong with it. You want it to be right, but you hear it and you make adjustments and you move forward. And yeah, so I think the community feedback is vital.
You mentioned with the adventure post that it's a QR code, so they're going to a website. Does the system actually keep records of like what people chose to help you design adventures in the future?
No, that would be pretty awesome though. I've been asked to make it an app, like a mobile app, so you could play it on your phone, which could be used for something like that. But no, it's just a static PDF file that you download and print.
That'd be cool to make an app for that.
It would be. It'd be fun.
Nathan's question about feedback gave me another idea here. So when you get to playtesting, what kind of playtesting procedures do you go through? Like, do you do like focus groups? Do you do any blind testing? You mentioned the one beta group that you attend. What sort of things do you do there?
Yeah, so a lot of the playtesting starts with my kids. Since my 8-year-old, he loves to play board games, so he's kind of, tests the mechanics to make sure everything works. And then the Rainy Day Games in Beaverton, Oregon, they have the Fresh Games group, which is just the owner himself has designed and published several games, and they've got some friends that have done it. And there's a fantasy author in the group as well, so just kind of bring it there, get a lot of feedback. They've all got, since they all have experience with they provided really solid feedback. A lot of the feedback comes from sending out the teasers, like with Everweird, with the Skinner Sanctum, and even with the Language of Magic. I gave out a print and play version teaser, essentially, so people could look at it online before they even backed the game. And so with the Language of Magic, we got some last minute feedback from that and incorporated it into the game and whatnot, just to make it a little bit better. But yeah, so that's kind of the process. Kids, and then the Rainy Day Games, and online feedback.
Well, I can't really fault you for that. If you want to try to break something, give it to a young child.
Yeah. Yep. And if you can't explain it or can't let them read something and they know how to play, if you can't make an 8-year-old understand it, or if you can make an 8-year-old understand it, it's a better way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a check for accessibility, if nothing else.
Right. But we didn't really talk a lot about the Language of Magic, and it was the first one that I published. And we did just do the giveaway for it. The Language of Magic it's kind of like a deck builder of sorts, but your deck consists of words of power, which are illustrated by runes. And again, going back to Ultima Online, that game uses the old Celtic runes as words of power for the spells, and I kind of borrowed from that. I actually talked to the creator of the Ultima series, Lord British, which is trademarked, so Richard Garriott. He gave me permission of sorts. I don't think it wasn't necessarily necessary for the permission, but he said this is where I got it from, and it would be awesome to kind of see you do it. So he's got a copy of the game. He's also a patron on the Adventure Post Patreon, and so that was kind of a huge nerd win in my life, was having him support it, and he gave me permission to put his name on the box and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a big deal. But the game is also it's got almost endless options for spells. If you want to cast a poison spell, which is create, Nox, which is poison, so you create poison, you can cast poison on somebody else. But if you want to negate poison, An is the opposite of in, it's negate, and so it's a kind of a cure spell. But then you can also hit multiple targets, you can turn it into an AoE, you can turn it into a damage over time. Well, poison is a damage over time, but you can turn a fire spell into a damage over time. And so it's just like, it's really customizable. And we wrote up some rules to make it incorporate into like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or something along those lines, but we've never done anything with that as well, because it really opens up options for just kind of an advanced magic system.
Yeah, I also really like the fact that it's cooperative.
Yeah, it can be played as a 4-player co-op versus the Lich and his minions, or you can do duels or whatever you want to, or it can be played solo.
Yeah, it looks really cool, and it's really cool that you got him to back and like that game too.
Yeah, Yeah, he was one of the highest backers when we ran the campaign. So it's awesome having like somebody that's been kind of an icon in your life support one of your projects. So.
And if people wanted to buy that, where could they get that at?
Caveloot.com sells it, and then Indie Pro Distributors sells it.
I was about to ask. I just saw that it was picked up by the distributor. I was going to ask, which one? Because, I run a game store, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Indie Pro Distributors, and I think they just pretty much do the Pacific Northwest. But
they'll still ship anywhere, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, do you have a favorite artist you work with, or is that kind of like picking your favorite child?
I do have a favorite. I have a couple of favorite artists. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint, but most of the money that I've put towards art has gone towards Indy Martin of Tortoise and Hare Creations. She's the official Shroud of the Avatar comic book artist, which is why she started with the Language of Magic, because the Shroud of the Avatar is the new brainchild of Richard Garriott's. So she was doing the comic book for that. So she was the first artist the second artist I hired, but she's the one I hire for most of it. I also use Joseph Garcia out of Vancouver, Washington he did Tyke's Dungeon, and then Rick Hershey for the Skinner Sanctum, and now Florian Jonak for Jousting for Glory. But yeah, Indy Martin or Joseph Garcia would be my favorites, I think.
I don't think we actually talked about The Way of the Avatar yet.
The Way of the Avatar? Yeah, that's just a roll and write game, pretty much. It's, again, another Ultima-inspired project. And so as the Avatar, you're working towards maximizing all of your virtues and diminishing as many of the sins as you can. And so you roll the dice and you assign them to different things, and depending on what you assign it to, you'll be doing a favor for one of the major cities, and then you'll be going into one of the dungeons and fighting against that sin. And so Ultima has a lot to do with being a virtuous warrior essentially, and learning and that was. Going back to Adventure Post again, Adventure Post, the path of self-learning was you were learning the principles and the virtues, and while you were at it, you were also you were tempted to open chests that represented the sins, and so the choices that you made throughout the game affected the end of the game, and how I guess I don't want to spoil it, but it changes what happens at the end and how difficult it is.
That's awesome.
So,
I like roll and write, so definitely gotta try that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that one I think that one's on version 2, so it probably could use some cleaning up as well. But that one was inspired by another one of Jason Glover's games, Doom Realm, which is a pretty popular roll and write, I think. And that was my first experience with a roll and write game, and so then I wanted to make Path of the Avatar.
And Doom Realm looks pretty cool too.
Doom Realm it's fun. It's a good solo roll and write.
That one. So many games.
Many games.
Sounds like you're always like tweaking and working on your game. So, do you have any game that you've gotten to the point where you feel like it's done? There's nothing more I could do, or are you always just looking at the next step?
Unfortunately, I think I'm always kind of looking at the next step. The Adventure Post, we have a Path of Self-Learning, which is one of the 12-week adventures, and that one, I can't really expand upon that one. That one's done. When we ran that campaign, we did so well that we threw in another free sci-fi game as well. So we created Adrift, and that one is almost done. I just got to get it formatted for Drive-Thru RPG, and it will be done. So those two are the only ones that are really done. Even the Language of Magic, which was the first one we published, I'm already thinking about more runes that we could add, different packs of creatures that we can throw in there and whatnot. So that one will likely come out again here pretty soon. Well, not pretty soon, within the next 5 years.
Are these changes that you're making, are you looking more in the vein of like expansions, or are you looking more in the vein of, I'm just going to go to version 2? Because I need to rewrite some stuff.
A little bit of both. I think the Language of Magic really could have used some more clarity in the rule book. So there's a lot of clarity that needs to be provided. That's one of the drawbacks to the game, is how difficult it is to learn how to play, just because there are so many options. And so I would go back and rewrite some of that to make it more clear on how all the many different ways you can combine the spells. So, but then, Everweird is a complete adding stuff all the time, clarifying rules, making things more consistent, all that kind of stuff. So that one's and then yeah, Tyke's Dungeon has been an almost complete rewrite about 3 times. So yeah.
You're definitely gonna have to let me know when you're done with Tyke's Dungeon, because I'm super excited about that one.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So. I will. I need to get back to it, but one thing at a time, I guess. Well, 5 things at a time.
That seems more like the speed that you're going at to me. Yeah.
Yeah, which is hard because I'm also working a full-time job, which is, about 40 to 50 hours a week, and then I do side work on the side to help pay for the artwork, and I've got the family, and there's always a lot going on, but it's worth it.
Can you talk more about the sci-fi? I think it was called Adrift.
Adrift, yeah. So just because we did 373% funding on the campaign, we decided we were going to throw in another game, and so it uses a fairly similar rule system to Adventure Post, which is the pretty simple 2d6, a lot like Fighting Fantasy, but rather than being a solo adventurer going through a trial of character, you're a crew of 4 trying to survive a ship that's been boarded and damaged by space orcs. And so you start out and you got to fight some of the orcs, and there's passengers sleeping in a cryostasis chamber that you have to deal with. You have to try to repair some of the systems before you crash, and then you end up on another planet at the end. So
that sounds really, really cool.
It was a lot of fun to write. It was quite a bit different than A Path of Self-Learning, just because it is sci-fi. I've always loved sci-fi, and people seem to be fairly excited about it. I think the addition of having 4 characters, it opens it up so you can have multiplayer. Some people didn't really like the addition of the initiative and turn-based gaming. It was free, so we thought we'd kind of push the limits and see what we could do with such a simple system. But
so do you think you'll eventually morph into like a core system that you're just going to adopt in different levels?
I think that's going to be the Dungeoneer's Guide is the goal. It was the first one I started with, and again, it was really complicated in the beginning, but I've simplified it a lot, and it has it's definitely not to the complexity level of Dungeons & Dragons, so it's quite a bit more simple. I think it's got a fairly decent audience, or target audience, and that's the system that's going to get the most attention.
It's cool too, though, if you have it streamlined and nice, you can actually focus more on the story.
Yeah.
Actually, necessarily the mechanics, but then the mechanics are nice enough that you still resolve the things.
Yeah, that's my favorite part, is actually coming up with a story and doing the narrative side of it. And the Dungeoneer's Guide was originally designed to be a solo system, and so you have 4 dice in your hand instead of 2, and everything's kind of concealed. You can play it on your own, but adding other players as well as scaling the difficulty for the additional players, it's really easy to do. And so even the Skinner Sanctum, it was designed as a solo adventure, but each table where you're rolling to see what kind of creature you are, there's different options for different numbers of players. I think it's the most versatile out of all the systems that I've created anyway. I can't take credit for creating Everweird. Somebody else created that one. I just purchased the rights to it.
Still cool.
And it works well. People seem to enjoy the simplicity of it.
Yeah, I always say that I have enough dungeon crawls, but I never end up actually stop buying them.
Yeah, that's kind of always been my default go-to, has been Dungeon Crawler, though. Everweird was right along. I actually purchased the original version of it from him, which was just a print-and-play game, and then started talking to him about it and, helping out. I did a tabletop simulator port for it and gave him access to it and the people who had bought it already, and so that's kind of how me and the designer started talking in the first place.
That's really cool. So have you found that utilizing a tabletop simulator really helps out a lot?
I think so. I don't use it enough. I have Tyke's Dungeon on there, an earlier version of Tyke's Dungeon. The original version of Everweird is on there. I haven't put any of the other games on there yet. I need to use it more often, but when I do use it, it's very helpful because it's a much less expensive way to prototype.
Yeah, you get a wide audience. You can just, and I think you can open and close them, can't you? You can have them open and then remove them.
Yeah.
Because so you could say, this week's beta test. Have fun.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I get a lot of this. I get a fantasy adventure vibe from a lot of these things that I see on your webpage. Do you want to speak to sort of like your gaming roots? Did you play a lot of fantasy or adventure games as a younger you?
Yeah. I mean, it all started with Ultima Online. I think I bought Ultima Online from a secondhand game store, and that was just kind of the kick of my fantasy gaming. And then I got into Baldur's Gate. I played a lot of Baldur's Gate 2. Those are great games, Neverwinter. So that's kind of where it all started. So yeah,
I played
lots of fantasy gaming.
So much of that stuff I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I've
sorry,
Baldur's Gate probably 6 times.
Yeah.
I mean, besides your own games, obviously, have you done a lot of other like fantasy tabletop RPGs?
I've done D&D, probably not as much as I would like to have. I've done Unknown Armies, a little bit of Pathfinder, and some GURPS. Yeah, not as much as I would have liked, and I probably should have played more of them before I started trying to design them. But then, yeah, I wasn't sure if my lack of playing a lot of board game or RPGs would give me a different insight, so I could make it more simple, or if it would make it more difficult because I don't have the experience and I don't know everything that you could encounter and all that kind of stuff. But I think I've played enough to be, familiar. I don't know.
I don't think you made a poor decision there. I think simplicity is strength, and like there's this tendency in our role-playing games that they have become more simple as we have pushed through time. Back when I played, like in the 90s ish, there were some pretty clunky rule systems out there.
Yeah,
compared to today. I mean, compared to today, everything's light.
Yeah, it's that old school revival thing going. I think a lot of people OSR right now, but.
I will say, though, if you follow Pathfinder, not the second edition because I haven't played that, but the first edition of Pathfinder, if you follow all the rules to that, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There are so many little things that you have to roll for constantly in Pathfinder. No one ever uses all those rules. Like, they're not going to be like, I need to make sure I can carry water with me every day.
Right.
We're just going to assume you're hydrated.
Yeah. I mean, just like encumbrance rule in D&D, a lot of people just ignore that because that's just too much.
Yeah. It's really like the core is the storytelling, not the mechanics. The mechanics just help with it.
Right.
So there's no point in being crazy. So I do like that.
Yeah. The storytelling is one of my favorite parts, and so I wanted to make it so the story was easy to interact with the system. Especially rolling for events, there'd be a narrative for kind of what's happening, and then you roll the dice, and depending on what you roll, there's another little narrative that goes along with that, and so it kind of breaks it up a little bit and try to get as much narrative in there as I can.
Yeah. So is there any other products that you have or anything you have coming up that you'd like to highlight that we missed?
I think we covered most of them. The next one to come to Kickstarter is going to be the Dice Mimics, and then Everweird will be coming back to Kickstarter at some point, hopefully fairly soon. Tyke's Dungeon is out there at some point. But we're also starting to plan the Halloween edition of Adventure Post, and that's going to be called Terror Train, and have a new writer involved in that one. And so you'll be spending 12 weeks on a train with different things happening around you, and that will finish shipping on Halloween as long as we plan everything and get it shipped out and ready to go on time. So,
well, that's cool. Those games actually seem to be really good for the current climate right now, with everyone having to stay home.
Yeah, and they're small and they're lightweight. They're easy to pick up, and they're easy. Each postcard only takes like 20 to 30 minutes, so it's not like a big time commitment to get in there. They're small enough you can play it on the tray on an airplane. I was actually pretty shocked at how well it did. I wasn't expecting to make that much on the Kickstarter when we first launched it. Our goal was $1,200, and we ended up, making over 10,000. So it was pretty awesome.
I know there was a murder mystery one they had like that another group did that was really popular too. So I think there's a big market for that. And that wasn't really a game. It was just a murder mystery.
Yeah, you get envelopes and kind of read through all the evidence that was displayed or given to you, and
That's pretty cool.
I think people just like to have non-junk mail show up in their mailbox.
That's true too. Yeah.
Man, when was the last time I had non-junk mail show up in my mailbox?
Oh, today it was bills.
Right.
Well, I guess that's not junk, but it's also not interesting.
No, not interesting in any way.
Not engaging. Not fun, certainly.
So, one question I was really interested in, I'm always interested in this part, is you're starting to get into miniatures. What is that process like? I would assume it would be pretty difficult to be able to get a distributor for the miniatures and then get the model sent back and make sure everything was fine. How did that process work out?
Well, so far it hasn't been that bad yet. But we only have, so it started out with the artwork, and then I paid the sculptor to make the molds, and I've sent out for probably 4 or 5 different quotes, and they've ranged anywhere from $17,000 down to $5,000. And and then we send them the STL files, and they kind of give feedback and whatnot. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. I haven't gone through the full process yet. I think the person we're going to move forward with, they produce the miniatures as well as the cards that we want with all the stats on it and the box to hold them all and all that kind of stuff. So it hasn't been that bad. It's been just been kind of hard to get them exactly the information that they need, and it's been weird how different the quotes are, how big of a gap they are. So
yeah, I'm curious about that. Is it materials? Is it quality? Is it just like their business loadout in terms of the number of machines that they've got churning this stuff out? Or
I think that's what a lot of it is. It's the size of the company or the location, because the $17,000 they were going to do resin minis, 3D printed resin miniatures, and they're in the United States, but they didn't provide the box or the cards or anything else. So it would have been, I would have paid for the minis and then had to get the boxes elsewhere. And so, and then some people did them all, but the price was quite a bit higher because they were, I think it was a metal casting option instead of having the plastic miniatures, which would have been really cool. So I'm still kind of weighing some of those options, because I know the pewter minis would be really cool. Plastic miniatures are obviously a lot cheaper. So, but yeah, I think the guy that I'm planning on using so far, more than likely, is also the guy that published or that manufactured the Language of Magic for us. And so I have kind of a history with them, which is Vincent Games out of China.
Yeah, I've heard of them. That's really cool. Yeah, I think that one might actually, I'm hoping that one actually blows up as soon as you put it up there, because everything looks really sharp, and miniatures.
Miniatures. People love miniatures. Yeah.
People do love miniatures.
It's true. It's true.
It seems like some of those really big box games sell mostly just because they have amazing miniatures. It's like the game is kind of secondhand to just how detailed and intricate these miniatures are, which is still worth it.
Yeah, I love painting, so I'm like, some of them just get me, especially the CMON ones. Anything with Eric Lang's name on it. Oh, yeah.
Well, it looks like you're even offering STL files, so if people want to print them themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can attest. I don't think this made our episodes. It's something we talked about before we started really. I can attest 3D printing is not an easy thing. I bought a 3D printer a while ago. I still have not got it working. I've had it for a year and a half.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a little micro 3D that only does a 4-inch by 4-inch print base. And really poor quality, but it was the very first one I bought. It was like $450 at the time. And now I've got a Sidewinder, an Ender 3 sitting under my desk, and it doesn't work, and I don't have any idea what's wrong with it, and I haven't sat down to try to figure it out. So that's always been a struggle for me too, is actually getting the 3D printers to go. And they're so finicky and they break so often.
Yeah, I mean, technology has advanced in that sphere, but we got a ways left.
Yeah. Some of the best prints. There's HP has some printers here locally, and public can use them, or if you talk to the right person, they can sneak in a print for you. And they have some of the best quality because it's one of those that pulls it out of the solution as it's printing it. And so you can, you do some pretty awesome stuff with it. But
yeah, we had a resin printer at work for a while, and that thing was amazing.
Yeah, the resin quality is way higher.
And also, it's so expensive. That's
Yes.
so expensive. But I played with them enough, I could probably fix Nathan's.
Yep. You have to come up here.
I will say, though, if you 3D print, it is a lifestyle. Because it has to be. You have to modify those on a regular basis and keep calibrating them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, never buy a 3D printer anymore. Or don't buy a 3D printer if it's resin, it's fine. But if it's not resin, don't buy any that don't have a heated bed.
Oh yeah, yep. Yeah, I think the Ender 3 has one. The little Micro 3D doesn't have the heated bed, but it's just so low detail, and those little plastic injection ones that the early ones are definitely not very good quality, but they were fun to play with.
The Ender 3 looks really good though.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle if you want it. So
Yeah.
You get some cool stuff out of that. it's I like to say that I do, but a lot of it's just me being stupid. Like, did you read that card? I thought, nope. Apparently, I didn't.
Yeah, I caught him a couple times, but I think there was one rule we got wrong, and we were 3/4 of the way through the game before I realized it. I just didn't bother saying anything.
Yeah, I haven't played Star Wars Rebellion, but I really wanted to try Star Wars the miniatures.
Imperial Assault.
Imperial Assault. Yeah.
I have that in 2 expansions. I played it once.
Oh yeah.
I have a problem with when it comes to dungeon crawls, but the game, it's amazing. It's actually better than Descent Second Edition.
It's back there somewhere. I can't find it.
The only thing I wish they did with Imperial Assault. So in Descent Second Edition, and then they came out later on with the Lord of the Rings version for it. The Lord of the Rings uses more of like a Mansion of Madness app to it, but the point is, in Descent Second Edition, they have an app where you can actually be DM-less in it.
Oh, cool.
So in Descent Second Edition and Imperial Assault, you have to have it in DM. They didn't actually put out that much content for their Imperial Assault app, so I think right now there's only 2 campaigns in there, where there's like 12 for Descent Second Edition.
But you think the mechanics are a little bit better for Imperial Assault?
Yeah, the line of sight is better for Imperial Assault, and some of the other stuff is like streamlined a little better in that aspect.
Very cool.
So if you had to pick, you'd probably pick Imperial Assault, but Imperial Assault's awesome.
Yeah. I am not good at painting, so that's kind of been my big holdback on getting Imperial Assault stuff, is because then, I'd just be playing with a bunch of gray miniatures. So
we did that for the longest time. This is actually, and I've had it for probably about 3 years now. I think that's pretty close. And I almost have the whole thing painted for what I have. But I still have 4 miniatures left.
Yeah.
It takes forever. For me, it takes forever.
Yeah.
That, and I got Mansions of Madness, and I just skipped painting everything else and just been blasting.
Nice. That's another one. I've played it a couple of times, and I want to buy it for myself because I've always just played other people's copies of it. So I want to.
Yeah. Mansions of Madness, amazing.
Yeah.
Although if you buy everything, so I'm missing one expansion. If you buy everything, the thing becomes completely unwieldy to actually take anywhere. So,
yeah, you practically have to pack up your whole trunk just to take the game somewhere.
Yeah, I did. I brought it to Slip Rock Con, and then we have our local library does a game day, and I brought it there too. And wow, it's just a lot of stuff. So.
Speaking of which, we have one coming up, July 18th, in about a month.
Yeah, that one will be online. So if you actually have any of your games ready on Tabletop Simulator, because this one's online until the library's allowed to have people congregate inside of it.
Oh, okay.
So if you have any of your games set up for Tabletop Simulator, and you want any beta tests or you want people to play your game, 100% let me know, and you can jump onto our Discord channel and grab some people and play.
Okay, that'd be cool. I think it'd be fun to run a Dungeoneer's Guide game or something along those lines.
Yeah, we do have a really strong RPG community, so that would work too. if you have like any files you want them to have ahead of time, if you did want to do that, you can post them out there for them, like if you want them to fill out character sheets or whatever.
Yeah.
So let me know.
Okay. Or a game of the language of magic duels or something like that, and you have some PvP.
Yeah, that'd be super cool too. In fact, I think that would work out really good because last time we'd have like people come in late, and sometimes I couldn't play some places, and that would be something that most of the people in this area would be like up for.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I am very bummed about all the cons canceling and then going online, and then Origins just canceled.
Yep.
Origin Online's just canceled. I mean, I just got my badge and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But Origins Online is canceled?
Yeah, Origins Online is canceled. I'm pretty sure just announced today. Either way, even if it wasn't just announced today, I got the email today that it was canceled. So
wait, they took the convention online and then they also canceled it?
Yeah, they canceled it.
That's due to some PR stuff going on right now, isn't it?
I think it's
partially.
I don't know if I believe completely that it is. Part of it's PR. I think also if you look at when I was following them on there, they weren't really ready.
Yeah.
So I don't think they were on track to actually accomplishing the online con the way they wanted to. So I think there's multiple factors into the decision to cancel it. It's not easy doing an online con. Even the little dinky one that I did. So the logistics are just insane.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how you heard about the Dice Tower and Board Game Geek Con. They're going to do an online one where you actually Tabletop Simulator is allowing anyone in that con to use their software for free.
Oh, that's cool.
It's going to be a gaming con that's online. So
that's pretty sweet.
That's pretty sweet. I'm wondering how well that works out because I think those are two of the biggest groups in our industry. So theoretically, they're going to bring in a huge crowd. So I'm wondering how well Tabletop Simulator is going to handle.
Yeah, like their back end.
Yeah. So I don't know. I found it interesting how the U.S.'s infrastructure is not really there when it gets like hammered like it's been.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like anytime something major launches, stuff just breaks.
Yeah.
Online stuff just breaks.
I think people don't appreciate how much equipment and resources are required just to be able to allow people to do these different video games and different things online. I mean, there are farms that are required to be able to make this happen. And companies pay millions of dollars, the big guys, normally video game companies, to let these people connect. It's just insane.
Yep.
Well, even the big companies often have major failures. I mean, Pokemon Go had a major failure. And they had a convention that they had planned, and when people got there, they just overwhelmed the servers. Everything crashed, so the entire convention that they had, nobody could actually go on Pokemon Go.
Yep. Yeah, I went to Autodesk University a couple of years ago, and they had just started an app that you can use while you're at the convention, and everybody downloaded it, and nobody could use it because it just kept crashing. So many people were on it, and it was bogged down, and yeah.
Yeah, I was just pulling up the Origins. They actually haven't even changed the website to tell people it's canceled. They just took down the registration.
Oh no, it's there. If you go to Origins Online and you read their little spiel, it's in there. So Origin, they do have it listed. It's just not like in big bold words. It's in the paragraphs that they're talking about.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, I got my little thing out.
Yeah, that's a significant tangent, gentlemen.
Yeah, that is a very big tangent. Although, looking at the castle tiles, I think that would be really, really cool as an app-based game.
You think so?
Yeah, I think that would be, like, if you got that on iOS or Android, I think it'd probably be easiest to do, make the biggest splash for the iOS because the store on the iOS is much easier to use and actually has more people on it. And it seems that Apple users are willing to pay more for games, or the Android users are more free.
Yeah, open source, they like the free games.
Right. So I think that game would be like super awesome on the iOS. I don't think it would take that much.
Yeah, I mean, all the rules are pretty basic, and all the math is really basic, and I mean, you just gotta set it up so you could have a different person on either, two different phones, and you play together, or you could play the AI or whatever. I think the AI would probably be the hardest to program, but I have thought about doing an actual graphics upgrade for that one, because right now I'm just using all the free icons from GameIcons.net. So,
Okay.
yeah. But
And as long as Asmodee Digital doesn't have anything to do with it, it should run pretty well.
He's still sore about Blood Rage. So the Blood Rage Digital, oh my gosh. I will say Blood Rage Digital, if you're playing it with yourself, just against the AI, fine. But if you try to get people to join your game, wow. It actually, well, it crashes or it's just completely unplayable. Like we tried like 5 times in a row and you get up to the, I don't know if you ever played Blood Rage, but Blood Rage is a fast-paced drafting game with miniatures from Eric Lang. So miniatures, yeah. So the idea is you draft your cards and they give you these powers or monsters, and then you're going to deploy your people onto the map, and you're going to try to pillage different places on the map. And you're going to use some of the cards out of your hand to boost your battle strength, but there's no rolling dice. It's just whoever had the highest numeric value at the end of the battle wins, and the loser dies. Yeah. And if you tie, everyone dies. But anyway,
that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's pretty fast. It actually has a really unique. It was the first game that I saw it actually implemented very well in, where there's a strategy to lose in the game.
Strategy to lose?
Yes, which is a really cool idea. So basically, there's a Loki strategy, where by losing, you punish the winner.
Okay.
And you'll either get glory, or you'll steal cards from them, or really cool stuff.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so they made an app that you could join different players together, and then the app flopped. Yeah. It's like playing Catan Universe.
Man. I had to stop playing that because, I played it a long time ago, too, when it first came out. It was bad. Yeah,
it seems like every single time you get on there, you have to at least restart at least one time. Just because it crashes out, and then people are always dropping for no apparent reason, and you get the kick timer, and
See, I don't understand this stuff. Like, Catan Universe has been around for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
Fix it.
Right.
And then the Terraforming Mars app doesn't give you enough time to actually do stuff.
Oh.
So it'll boot you out of your own game. Seriously?
Yeah.
It's like the Blood Rage one. Did you try multiplayer?
Was that even part of your beta testing?
Yeah, did you even try that? Did you try? Well, the funny part is in beta testing, multiplayer was not an option.
Oh, really?
No. You could only do AI.
So then they integrated the multiplayer, didn't test it, and pushed it out.
That's exactly what it's... I don't know. That's what it seems like.
Well, the tutorial wasn't available in the beta either, and when they launched, the tutorial didn't work either.
Oh, no.
In all of my time in C1 has never been a company to apologize. That was the first time I've ever seen anything from them where they apologized about. So they apologized about the app.
Oh, man.
And in a Kickstarter. So normally I try to not do that. But
yeah,
I love Blood Rage. I think the Blood Rage app could be phenomenal. And I'm glad they're working on it if they are. So, in Catan Universities, fix your stuff.
Yes.
I'll play it.
Yeah. I do a bi-monthly or a bi-weekly game night with some guys from one of the other electrical contractors out here. And so it's always, we start with Catan Universe, and then we move to the Wii and play something. And so it's just kind of a joke every time we start Catan Universe. It's like, all right, we got to restart the app, and then we'll try again. And then one person gets booted partway through. So it's kind of something we've learned to accept.
There's actually a couple cool board games on the Wii. Or, no, it's a Switch. On the Switch.
Oh, it's Switch?
Yeah. And I think one of them's Catan.
Oh, really? Yeah, I think we talked about swapping over to Catan on the Switch, just because the Catan Universe iPad app is so questionable.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember which one I'm thinking about the most. Because I knew they did Catan. Wingspan, I believe, is also coming to the Switch.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know if I play Wingspan. Wingspan's phenomenal.
That one did really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love the game. I did the beta for Wingspan too, and it was pretty solid. It had a couple little things in it that they're going to fix up, but I thought for beta that it was pretty good.
Well, so I tried to look up Switch board games, and I came up with a board game called Switch.
Well, so the big ones are going to be the one I was actually thinking was Pandemics on the Switch.
Oh, okay.
And also Carcassonne. So you could play Pandemic, Carcassonne, and Catan.
I remember when this whole COVID thing started, Pandemic sold off the shelves like crazy.
Yeah.
Convenient.
Yeah. And they have I thought it was funny that people are getting all mad. They're making tons of money on pandemic, and they're like, oh, we have North America hot whatever. So they just focused at North America, and they're going to do each country. And people are like, why'd you pick North America? Well, literally, they had to have the game in the works for a year. So, you know.
Yeah.
They're not saying anything, but they're saying something.
They're just like, wait, bad timing. I don't know. Here's the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's somebody's been making some politically guided expansion cards for Pandemic, which I want to print out and check out because I think it'd be kind of fun.
I think that'd be hilarious.
Yeah. Depending on which side of the spectrum you stand on.
Yeah, either way, I think that would be hilarious.
It would.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know. I'm really liking how some of the big games are going to the Switch, and they actually have.
Oh, it seems pretty like it is a great idea just because the Switch is so multiplayer, and you can have 4 people. Depending on the controls, you could have 4 people playing it in the same room, or I mean, it's just a good platform, and most people that have kids seem to have a Switch because it's really good for young kids too, and so it seems like a good platform to do that on.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably should close with going over once again where our listeners could find you and your company.
Okay, so yeah, we're Geeks Collaborative Gaming. We're on Facebook as Geeks C Gaming. Geeks C for Collaborative Gaming. We're on Twitter as Geeks Collab and Instagram as Geeks Collab. We're also on Tumblr as Geeks Collab. And so if you go to geekscollab.com, the website needs a lot of work, but it is there, and it kind of goes through a lot of our games that we're working on right now. And yeah, I think our biggest presence is on Twitter and Facebook.
So thanks for coming on, Shawn. I hope you had fun. It was really cool talking about your company.
Thank you for being on the show, and good luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback for us, feel free to visit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Board Game Geek Guild at 2989, or our website at tabletopgamingguild.com. And don't forget to like, follow, and or subscribe. Tabletop Gaming Guild is a product of Tabletop Gaming Guild, LLC. All rights reserved.